Tens of thousands of people have been marching in central London, calling on the UK government to do more to tackle the cost of living crisis. Trade union leaders, frontline workers and community organisations were among those at the demonstration, demanding what they say must be a better deal for workers struggling to cope.
We've got tens of thousands of people coming from every nation in the UK, from all walks of working life, and they're coming together to tell the government and tight-fisted employers that enough is enough, that working people need to maintain their standard of living. They've had over a decade of real cuts and freezes to pay, and they can't take any more. So it's a very simple message that none of us want to see a country where nurses and social care workers are having to go to food banks to get by. If you earn a living, you have to work for a living, you ought to be able to achieve a fair wage.
Well, a little earlier we heard from our correspondent Matt Graveling, who was with protesters.
Well, there's a huge crowd here, but as you just heard in that short clip, although there are lots of people, this is very an individual matter. Everybody here feels their life has been hit by the rising cost of living. This big march, which has got thousands of people here, started at Portland Place at about midday, and there's still people coming down here into Parliament Square right now. We just had a massive cheer as the RMT union came into sight, because of course they just announced this morning strike action next week. So they were very well received here. But this is, as I say, all about the rising cost of living, how much it's costing now for energy bills and to fill up your car with petrol. People here now saying enough is enough, and they've come here to call on the government to do more. I've been joined by two people here, Stephen and Ellie. Now, Stephen, you've come down from Oxford today, especially for this march. What brought you down? Why do you feel so passionately?
I think you get to the stage where enough is enough. You know, teachers have had a real terms pay cut of 20% in the last 12 years. And the way things are going, that's just going to get worse over the next 12 months. We're looking at inflation going above 11%. We've had a pay freeze for the last few years. We're looking next month at a pay deal. It's probably going to be around 2% for most teachers. That's just not going to be enough. And their teachers are leaving the profession because they're struggling so much. They just think it's not worth it, and that makes life more difficult for all teachers. We're filling in, we're doing more for less, basically. So we need a pay rise. All teachers need a pay rise across the profession.
Ellie, we heard there from Stephen about the profession, how it's impacting you. I know you're also a teacher.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your home life, your own personal experience as prices are going up.
Prices are going up, yeah. I mean, Stephen and I, as I said, we live in Oxford, one of the most expensive places to rent and to buy outside of London. It's incredibly difficult for people to sustain themselves. We've got, as Stephen said, I mean, in terms of teaching, again, we're in the midst of a recruitment crisis. We have been for years. We work with young teachers, you know, in their early 20s, and they are already leaving the profession. They're not even completing their training because they can't afford to pay their rent. They'd rather work elsewhere, get paid more, and not have to take work home, you know, take time off, you know, yeah.
You're talking about the next generation. They're just below you there, if we can have a little look, is your 5-year-old boy hiding from the loud noises. What do you think about his future as we see rising costs go up now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, it's a worry. You know, we will do the best we can. We'll make compromises for ourselves so that he's got what he needs, as any good parent would. As teachers, we are just about able to do it, but for those who can't, you know, afford to make those choices, it's going to be even more difficult. So, you know, we've got our own child, but we see other children in our classrooms whose parents and whose backgrounds are that much more difficult. So, yeah.
Just to add, you know, if things don't change, then there's only one solution, and that's industrial action and a general strike, including the NEU and the teachers' unions, because in the long run, the people who suffer will be the children and our students.
Thank you very much for your time, both of you. And of course, industrial action is something we will be seeing from the RMT next week. I need to say as well that the government have said they're putting £16 billion to try and help the vulnerable, including paying for people's energy bills, and £650 to go towards the really vulnerable. And last week they did also employ an advisor to take them through this cost of living crisis, the co-founder of Just Eat. And his advice to everybody here and to the government and private companies is basically quickly. We need to get out of this cost of living crisis by private companies finally coming to the party to help.
Our correspondent Matt Graveling speaking to us earlier.